Hello everyone, my name is Doug Bassett. I'm Senior Technical Instructor here at Stormwind Studios. And one of the classes that I really enjoy teaching is my AZ-103, which is the Microsoft Azure Administrator class. And I just love cloud computing. It's so fun to be able to go through and set up these configurations. One of the things that we are frequently asked to create are networks and subnetworks. And it's really, really simple. In fact, this is something that you may find exam worthy. And one of the things about this AZ-103 exam is you pass one exam and then boom, you have the certification. Most of the new Microsoft certification exams, you got to do 2 of them. So let's go ahead and show you something that they may ask you to do on this exam, which would be to create a subnet. So we're going to go over into the Azure portal, and they've kind of modified this a little bit. It used to be that we would have this little piece that sticks out all the time, and then they said, you know what, do we actually need this out all the time? And so now it's kind of a missing thing, but if you're used to it there, it's just right here in our little hamburger thing. So we're going to create a brand new resource, and this is going to be a virtual directory or a virtual network. So I'll say virtual network and we can use this to go in and set up a network, but you have to make subnets. And so the network is going to be a larger address space, and then the subnets are going to be part of that address space. And in that subcomponent, this is where you'd actually store the virtual machines. If you can do like a VPN gateway, you would set that up in there. If you can do a front end, back end, you could all do it in this same network. But the big part is, this first part is the network, and then we're going to create little subnets. So we'll show you how to do that. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to give it a name. We're going to call this one R&D net. Keep it simple. Here's the address space. Now this uses what's called classless interdomain routing, or Cider Notation. And with Cider Notation, instead of having to go 285.285.0.0, which is dotted decimal notation, you just say how many bits of this 32-bit IP address is network portion. So in this case, we're going to use the first 16 bits. So I'm going to change this. Instead of 10.3, I'm going to say 10.23. Now, be aware that you don't want to use an address that you're already using on premise or in other virtual networks if you're going to connect them together, because then anything in this network is going to think that anything else that has the same address space is in the same network. And so they won't be able to communicate back and forth. So if you're using like a 10.1 in your environment, a 10.2 in your environment, you're going to want to use something different up in Azure. So if you decide that I want to set up a VPN between Azure, this particular network, and then down to my local on-prem stuff, I don't have that address overlap. But this is the big network, so we're going to do 10.23. And I can also put in an IPv6 address. These are assigned to subscription. I'll just use my MSDN platform. It's not for production, just for testing. And then I will select the resource group. Now I can create a brand new resource group, or if I have one already there, I can go ahead and use that one. We also have our location. This is important because if we're going to create virtual machines, and the virtual machines have storage and all this and all that, you're going to want to know what region or what particular location you're going to use it in, because it all has to be in the same spot. So we're just going to put this in Western US. And then it allows me to create a subnet, because up here we have the big network, but now we're going to carve that out into little subnets. So we're going to give this one a name. We're going to call this one R&D front. R&D front. And we will change this to the right subnet address, 23. And then I'm going to use that third octet to make a individual subnet. So we'll do a 10, for example. And by default, it is going to do a /24, which means these first 3 octets of the IP address, or the first 3 blocks, are going to be the network portion, and then everybody in that subnet will use that .10 network, the 10.23.10. And then if we wanted to create like a VPN gateway or another subnet but in the same network, we would just create different subnets. We can have distributed denial of service protection. We're just going to go with basic. Then we can have service endpoints in there, or firewalls. I'm not going to do either of those. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit create. And then the deployment is going to be in progress. Now, it doesn't take very long to be able to go through and do that. So we're going to go ahead and select go to the resource. And this is the R&D overall network. And just gives kind of an overview. Let me get my head out of the way here. And we can see the activity log, anything that's going on there. We haven't done anything with it yet. We also have access controls. This is where I can determine who can do what inside of here. We can put in resource tags if we need to. If we have problems, they have some built-in diagnosis. But it shows us our overall address space. This is the 10.23. That's the subnet that we have. I can add additional address spaces if I want to, but we're just going to keep it basic here. Also, once we drop some stuff in there, we'll be able to see what devices are connected. We can look at the overall subnets and add additional subnets, or we can add a gateway subnet. That's pretty important if we are planning on setting up a VPN to our on-premise network. We can also connect this particular network into other networks up in Azure, or we can even connect between regions. And if you come to the AZ-103 class, we go through and we show you if you do it between regions, it usually takes about 45 minutes for the connection to be established. You have to have public IP addresses. But if it's within the same region, you can also spend a lot of time doing it, or there's a really quick way to do it that Microsoft has rolled out, and we go in and do a lot of discussion on that. They also have options in here on distributed denial of service protection, firewall information. We can go in and set up security. We can set up DNS servers if we like to. The part where I was talking about hooking the different networks together, that's called peering. We can do network peering, which is really quick. We can do service endpoints. We can set up private endpoints. Here's the overall properties of the stuff that's set up in here, the resource groups, the subscription that we're using, the subscription ID. We can also put in locks, and locks are pretty important because I can go in and I can lock this object in Azure so that if another administrator decides to lose their mind and change it, or maybe we have some scripts or something, by having it locked, it keeps that from actually being deleted. We also can take and export the template. And let me get my head out of the way so you can see this. This is an Azure Resource Manager template. So if we wanted to do this programmatically, this is where I can simply download it. And what a lot of administrators do is they will go into Portal and they will create whatever it is that they want to create, and then grab this template to use the template inside of ARM to be able to do this via scripts. And this can save just tons and tons and tons of time. So it's pretty easy to go in and set networks up into Azure. There's a lot of stuff to do in Azure. Heck, the student guide that I put together is over 800 pages long, and it is very, very awesome. So lots of good stuff. Hope to see you in class, and have a good one.